Shohei Ohtani almost never shows it. That's what made this moment so shocking. Over the years, baseball fans have watched Ohtani hit impossible home runs, throw unhittable pitches, win MVP awards, and carry the expectations of an entire country on his shoulders. Through all of it, one thing has remained remarkably consistent: his composure, his calm, his ability to stay cool no matter what is happening around him. Which is why what fans saw during this game immediately became one of the most talked about moments of the season, because for a brief moment, Shohei Ohtani looked like he had finally had enough. The cameras caught it, the crowd noticed it, the broadcasters noticed it, and within minutes, social media was exploding with theories. What happened? Why did Ohtani look frustrated? Was something going on between him and Dalton Rushing? And perhaps most importantly, what was Ohtani going to do next? Because if there is one thing baseball fans have learned over the years, it's that an extra motivated Shohei Ohtani is usually a very dangerous Shohei Ohtani. The game itself had already carried a strange energy. The Dodgers entered the night with all the expectations that come with being one of the most talented teams in baseball. Every game felt important, every at-bat seemed to carry extra weight, every decision was being analyzed, and for Ohtani, that spotlight never disappears. Every movement is watched. Every reaction is dissected. Every expression becomes a headline. That's the reality of being the biggest star in baseball. The pressure follows you everywhere. So when cameras appeared to catch a moment of visible frustration involving Ohtani and rookie catcher Dalton Rushing, fans immediately began paying attention. Commentators replayed the sequence. Former players started offering opinions. Fans debated it across every corner of the internet. Some believed it was simply a competitive moment. Others thought it revealed something bigger. Nobody knew for sure, but everyone was talking about it. What made the moment so fascinating was not what happened, it was who it happened to. Because Shohei Ohtani is not known for confrontations. He's not known for drama. He's not known for emotional outbursts. He's known for smiling. He's known for professionalism. He's known for carrying himself like one of the most disciplined athletes in sports. That reputation made the entire scene feel different. When another player gets frustrated, people move on. When Ohtani gets frustrated, people stop and watch. And that's exactly what happened. As the game continued, the discussion only grew louder. Broadcasters couldn't stop mentioning it. Fans kept posting clips. Every camera angle was analyzed. Every reaction was examined. And yet while everyone else seemed focused on the drama, Ohtani appeared focused on something completely different: winning the game. Because what happened next is why people are still talking about this night. Not because of the frustration, not because of the speculation, not because of the speculation, not because of the controversy, but because of how Ohtani responded. And what followed felt like the beginning of one of those performances that only he seems capable of delivering. The kind of performance that changes the entire conversation. The kind of performance that reminds everyone why he remains the most fascinating player in baseball. The kind of performance that leaves an entire stadium speechless. And by the end of the night, nobody was talking about frustration anymore. They were talking about greatness. By the middle innings, something strange was happening inside the stadium. The discussion surrounding Shohei Ohtani and Dalton Rushing had not gone away. If anything, it was getting bigger. Every time the broadcast returned from commercial break, commentators found themselves discussing the moment again. Former players in the booth were offering their perspectives. Some called it a simple competitive exchange. Others suggested it showed just how seriously Ohtani takes every aspect of the game. Regardless of what side people were on, everybody seemed to agree on one thing: seeing Ohtani visibly frustrated was unusual, very unusual. One commentator put it perfectly: when a player like Ohtani shows emotion, people notice because it almost never happens. That statement quickly spread online. Fans clipped it, baseball accounts reposted it. And suddenly the conversation was no longer about one moment. It became a conversation about Ohtani himself, his leadership, his standards, his competitiveness, his expectations. Because behind the smiles and humble interviews exists something many casual fans rarely see: an absolutely relentless competitor. The kind of competitor who hates losing. The kind of competitor who obsesses over details. The kind of competitor who expects excellence not only from himself but from everyone around him. That side of Ohtani doesn't appear often, but when it does, it tends to leave an impression. As commentators continued discussing the situation, Ohtani stepped into the batter's box. The crowd immediately rose in anticipation. They could feel it. The atmosphere felt different. Almost electric. There are certain moments in sports when thousands of people simultaneously sense that something is about to happen. This felt like one of those moments. The pitcher looked in. The crowd got louder. The first pitch arrived. Strike one. Ohtani calmly stepped out, adjusted his batting gloves, took a breath, stepped back in. The second pitch came in harder. Foul ball. Now the count was 0-0. The pitcher appeared confident. The opposing dugout looked energized. The crowd suddenly grew nervous. Then came the next pitch, and everything changed. Crack. The sound echoed throughout the ballpark. Every single person in the stadium immediately looked toward right field. Outfielders turned. Fans stood up. The ball kept traveling, and traveling, and traveling. Gone. Absolute no doubt home run. The stadium erupted. The reaction was immediate. Thousands of fans exploded to their feet. Teammates poured out of the dugout. Commentators nearly shouted over each other. And social media instantly shifted direction. Moments earlier, people were debating Ohtani's frustration. Now they were posting clips of another monster home run. The conversation had changed. But Ohtani wasn't finished. Not even close. What made the performance so impressive wasn't just the home run itself. It was the energy surrounding everything he did afterward. Every at-bat felt dangerous. Every swing felt important. Every time he touched the baseball, the stadium held its breath. The opposing team could feel it. The crowd could feel it. And perhaps most importantly, his teammates could feel it. Momentum had completely shifted. The Dodgers suddenly looked different, more confident, more aggressive, more alive. That is one of the hidden qualities that separate superstars from legends. Superstars produce numbers. Legends change the emotional direction of entire games. Ohtani was doing exactly that. One swing had transformed the atmosphere. The home run wasn't merely a run on the scoreboard. It felt like a statement, a reminder, a warning. The frustration everyone had spent hours talking about had not distracted him. It had sharpened him. The broadcast crew couldn't stop mentioning it. You can almost feel the intensity tonight. He looks locked in. Whatever happened earlier, he's clearly using it as motivation. Those comments only fueled the narrative. Fans continued debating. Commentators continued discussing. Former players continued analyzing. Meanwhile, Ohtani continued producing. Hit after hit. Quality at bat after quality at bat. Every inning seemed to feature another highlight. And as the game entered its later stages, a new realization began spreading through the crowd. This wasn't just a good game. This wasn't just another Ohtani performance. This was becoming one of those nights. The kind of nights baseball fans remember for years. The kind of nights that become YouTube videos. The kind of nights that get replayed over and over again, because the story had evolved. It was no longer about frustration. It was no longer about Dalton rushing. It was no longer about speculation. Now it was about what happens when one of the greatest players in the world reaches a level of focus very few athletes ever find. And the most incredible part? The biggest moment of the night was still waiting to happen. Because as the game moved toward its final innings, Ohtani was preparing to deliver the play that would leave the entire stadium speechless. As the game moved into the final innings, there was a feeling inside the stadium that is difficult to describe unless you've experienced it in person. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't nervousness. It wasn't even anticipation. It was something bigger. It was the feeling that everyone in the building was witnessing a story unfold in real time. And the center of that story was Shohei Ohtani. Hours earlier, fans had arrived expecting another Dodgers game. Now they were watching something that felt far more significant. Because what started as a discussion about a visible moment of frustration had transformed into a showcase of exactly why Ohtani is unlike any other player in baseball. The crowd could sense it. The broadcasters could sense it. Even the opposing team appeared to sense it. Everywhere you looked, eyes were following Ohtani. Every time he stepped onto the field, thousands of people instinctively leaned forward. Every movement felt important. Every moment felt magnified. The television cameras seemed unable to stop focusing on him. The commentators kept returning to the same question. What makes him different? Because there are plenty of talented players in baseball. There are plenty of all-stars. There are plenty of MVP candidates. But there is only one Shohei Ohtani. And on nights like this, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. As the Dodgers continued battling late into the game, fans remained fascinated by the earlier interaction that had dominated conversations throughout the evening. The clips continued spreading online. Baseball analysts continued discussing it. Former players continued offering opinions. What made the discussion interesting wasn't the moment itself. It was what fans believed it revealed. For years, people have seen Ohtani as baseball's most talented superstar. But nights like this remind people that underneath the calm exterior exists a fierce competitor, someone who expects greatness, someone who demands excellence, someone who absolutely hates coming up short. Many fans began pointing out the same thing. Perhaps the reason Ohtani has accomplished so much is because his standards are impossibly high. Perhaps the reason he continues doing things nobody else can do is because he refuses to accept anything less than his best. And perhaps the reason moments like this attract so much attention is because they give fans a rare glimpse into the intensity that normally stays hidden. The commentators discussed exactly that. One broadcaster noted that every truly great athlete eventually reveals that side of themselves. Michael Jordan had it, Tom Brady had it, Kobe Bryant had it, Tiger Woods had it. An obsession with winning, an obsession with preparation, an obsession with getting every detail right. And while Ohtani expresses it differently than many other legends, the competitive fire is clearly there. The difference is that Ohtani rarely talks about it. He simply shows it through his actions. And that was exactly what he was doing now. Because while everyone else continued discussing the earlier moment, Ohtani continued delivering one big play after another. The Dodgers needed a spark. He provided it. The Dodgers needed leadership. He provided it. The Dodgers needed someone to seize control of the game. He provided that too. As the innings passed, the performance became increasingly remarkable. Every time the opposing pitcher thought he had an answer, Ohtani created another problem. Every time the opposing dugout appeared to settle down, Ohtani created another moment. Every time the game threatened to drift away from the Dodgers, Ohtani pulled it back toward them. That's when the stadium atmosphere changed completely. People stopped talking. They started watching. Really watching. Because they realized they might be witnessing one of those legendary performances that gets remembered long after the final score is forgotten. The scoreboard mattered. But the story mattered more, and the story was becoming impossible to ignore. The frustration that had dominated the early innings was now serving as the backdrop for something much bigger. A reminder of what happens when elite athletes channel emotion into performance. A reminder of what happens when competitors refuse to let distractions define them. A reminder of what happens when greatness responds to pressure. As the game approached its biggest moment, the crowd reached another level. Every pitch generated noise. Every strike generated cheers. Every close call generated gasps. The energy felt almost playoff-like. And standing at the center of all of it was Shohei Ohtani, the same player everyone had been discussing all night. The same player everyone had been analyzing all night. The same player everyone had been questioning all night. Now he had an opportunity to put the finishing touch on the story, and somehow the moment felt inevitable. That is perhaps the most incredible thing about Ohtani. When he delivers in big moments, people are impressed, but they are rarely surprised, because he has done it so many times before. The extraordinary has become ordinary. The impossible has become expected, and that is a terrifying reality for the rest of baseball. Imagine being an opposing player. Imagine seeing Ohtani locked in. Imagine seeing him motivated. Imagine seeing him focused. Imagine seeing him already dominating the game. Then imagine realizing there are still crucial innings left to play. That is the challenge every opponent faces, and on this particular night that challenge felt overwhelming. As the game entered its final stages, the Dodgers were looking for one last push, one final statement, one final moment. The crowd rose again. Thousands of people stood. Phones appeared throughout the stadium. Fans wanted to capture whatever came next. Nobody wanted to miss it. The anticipation was unbelievable. And then came the moment. The kind of moment that reminds people why they fell in love with sports in the first place. The kind of moment that instantly becomes part of a player's highlight reel. The kind of moment that causes an entire stadium to explode. The reaction was immediate. Fans jumped out of their seats. Teammates erupted from the dugout. Broadcasters lost their minds. The noise inside the stadium became deafening. For a few seconds, it felt like the entire ballpark was shaking. And standing in the middle of all of it was Shohei Ohtani, calm, focused, confident. The exact same player who had entered the game carrying enormous expectations. The exact same player whose attitude had become one of the biggest talking points of the night. The exact same player who had responded the only way he knows how, by letting his performance do the talking. That is ultimately why fans are still discussing this game. Not because of speculation, not because of rumors, not because of controversy, but because it revealed something important. It reminded everyone that Shohei Ohtani is not merely talented, he is relentlessly competitive. It reminded everyone that greatness often reveals itself during moments of pressure. It reminded everyone that the players who reach legendary status are usually the ones who respond when the spotlight becomes brightest. Most athletes get distracted by attention. Most athletes get distracted by criticism. Most athletes get distracted by emotion. The greatest athletes use those things as fuel, and that is exactly what Ohtani appeared to do. By the end of the night, the conversation had changed completely. The discussion was no longer about frustration. The discussion was no longer about body language. The discussion was no longer about what people thought they saw. The discussion was about Shohei Ohtani, his leadership, his competitiveness, his standards, his greatness. Fans left the stadium talking about him. Commentators ended the broadcast talking about him. Baseball shows spent the following days talking about him. Social media continued talking about him. And perhaps that's the biggest sign of all. Because great players produce highlights, legendary players create stories. Stories that people remember, stories that people debate, stories that continue long after the game ends. This became one of those stories. A night that began with questions. A night that began with speculation. A night that began with visible frustration. And a night that ended with Shohei Ohtani reminding the baseball world exactly who he is. One of the most extraordinary athletes the sport has ever seen. The frustration got the attention. The performance stole the headlines. And by the time the final out was recorded, one thing was absolutely clear. Whatever happened earlier in the game, Shohei Ohtani had responded in the most dangerous way possible. He turned it into motivation. He turned it into focus. He turned it into another unforgettable performance. And that is exactly why fans, commentators, and the entire baseball world are still talking about it today. Because some players react to pressure, Shohei Ohtani seems to become stronger because of it. And that's what left the entire stadium speechless.